suspended.
Sounds like it was apt, but no, we had just finished a conference at the Ron Paul Institute. I was staying at a friend's house, and he likes to watch Hannity, and so it was on, and Hannity was going on and on about the deep state. You know, the right loves to talk about these things when convenient, and he's going on and on and on about the deep state with the CIA pin in his lapel, and I just tweeted that word. I said, this guy is totally blank. You know, if he thinks that he's against the deep state and in love with the CIA, because guess what? That's kind of part of it. So, and that was it. That was the end of that, you know. And I pointed out that a lot of people say it, and they don't get busted. Didn't matter. I point out that people say, you know, you should kill Rand Paul, and that's okay. You know, nothing changes it. So it was. I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed because it wasn't anything worthy of getting even suspended for. But there you have it. That was 2019, and now we're in 2022 now.
Oh my.
Well,
God.
and again, it was shocking. We had Daniel on fault lines as soon as it happened because it was shocking, but Sean Hannity's back in the headlines because the January 6th committee wants to call. Did you see this, John? They want to call Hannity.
Yeah, they want to call Hannity. Yep. They want to know what he was texting back and forth with the White House.
Yeah, I'm sure it was brilliant. Daniel, can you wait to see what bits of genius Sean Hannity was texting back and forth with the White House? Are you waiting for that?
I'm sure it was of great strategic importance.
Yeah, like Bernie Kerik. What Bernie Kerik has to say, great strategic importance. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I wish someone would tell us what the people in the orange caps were doing that were there on the 6th, as a lot of great people like Julie Harris is reporting. But that's, I guess, another story.
Yeah, no, there are real stories I guess if we look at the calendar, it hasn't been declared a national holiday yet, but we're at Insurrection Eve. Right, John? That's today's Insurrection Eve.
Lee, if you look at WashingtonPost.com, you have to go down literally 50% of the way down to get to a non-January 6th related story. It's ridiculous.
All the children are putting out their shaman stockings. Go ahead, Daniel. How are you celebrating Insurrection Eve?
The funny thing is, if anyone was actually interested in what an insurrection looked like, they would go on Twitter and follow a few of these groups that are in Kazakhstan right now. Because when you are loading a bunch of RPGs from the storehouse into Lexus, that is an insurrection. When you're burning down the government buildings and shooting at soldiers, that is an insurrection.
Right.
Have a goofy buffalo hat on and you go traipsing around the Capitol, it is not an insurrection.
And you have a history of mental illness.
See?
Yeah, that's not an insurrection.
Be a lot of things that might get you in trouble, but an insurrection looks a lot more like what's going on about to be crushed in Almaty right now.
Right. Right.
Well, and so this is another example of stupidity, but let's go back to something. We talked about the Fed before. Do you think that if a candidate came out and they made the Fed their central issue, and I don't care, Democrat or Republican, but they said, you know what, the main issue that I want to talk about is the Federal Reserve. Do you think that candidate would suddenly skyrocket in the ratings? Because I do. I think if a candidate had the guts on either the Republican or the Democrat side to say, you know what, we got to talk about the Fed and make that the central issue. Daniel, how do you think that would work?
Yes, man, I think it would have to be a certain type of candidate, though, because you can't exploit the R's and the D's or the L's and the C's. You know, it would have to be someone like, for example, hear me out, someone like a Jim Webb, who was a Democrat, ran as a different kind of Democrat who could convince America, middle America, hey, the Fed is ripping you off. Hey, working class America. Hey, a lot of the people that voted for Trump, hey, working class America, you want to know why you can't buy any hamburger this week? Well, here's why. Hey, anti-war left. Hey, pro-civil liberties libertarians. Here's why. So you'd have to frame it in a way that's so far out the current political framework right now that it would take someone of an extraordinary, communication skills to get it across.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. But the problem is, at least for Democrats, is people like Jim Webb generally aren't welcome in the party anymore.
No. And look at Tulsi Gabbard,
Look at Tulsi Gabbard.
could probably make it work. Yeah, she could make it work too. She's a great communicator. But yeah, they're definitely not welcome.
No.
Oh, look, most Beltway libertarians would hate to hear it too, because people like Cato, and there's a lot of decent people at Cato, but Cato never wanted to talk about the Fed. They never want to talk about the Fed. Neither do any of the Koch organizations want to talk about the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have a lot of pushback even from the libertarian circles.
I think that's right. And another thing, too, is where that might be great in a Republican primary, I think the Democrats would try to paint a candidate like that as an extremist.
Yeah, well,
they definitely do that. The question is, will it work or not?
Right.
But they'll definitely try to do that. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I think, that's what they did with Ron Paul, crazy Ron Paul. But, I think when you do talk about, many people have written about this, but here we ended a war in Afghanistan and we increased the military budget next year after that, and if you can't find a way to sell that, the Fed, they couldn't do it if it wasn't for the Fed in the funny money. If they had to actually say, okay, guys, pony up, you got to write an extra $300 in your tax charges this year because we're ramping up the military instead of pulling it down, then people would have to wake up. But that's not going to happen because we have the Fed to do it for us.
Yeah, and tell me something,
Daniel. As a longtime advocate, forgive me, John.
Please go right ahead.
As a longtime advocate of liberty, the COVID-19 thing. If you scan the news headlines, John, you know this from you and I both look at a lot of the news.
Yes.
COVID is half what everybody, Fox, NPR, ABC, CBS, doesn't. Right, John? Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all various things about COVID. You've watched this evolve. Do you think there are real liberty issues that are going to, make any headway because of the government's response to COVID-19? Daniel?
I think so, and I think we're making some headway. Those of us who obviously, there's some sickness out there, and obviously people are dying. There's no question about that. We're talking about something different, which is a government reaction, a government encroachment on civil liberties, which has been very convenient for Big Pharma, by the way, and people like Fauci who have made their career. I mean, he lived for this moment, and he loves to push people around. And I mean, the amazing thing is the NIH director Collins and Fauci colluding to keep any alternative views, like the Great Barrington Declaration, from even having a hearing. So I think what's happening now with the obvious failure of the shots for the American shots for the Omicron, and you're seeing a rare breakthrough being about 80% or whatever. When you're seeing that, you're going to see people that have gone along and said, okay, hey, I trust everyone, I trust my doc or whatever. They're going to start saying, hang on a minute, something is not making sense here. And I think that's when people will hopefully wake up a little bit and see everyone. Some people they want to to paint this as sort of a binary thing, where you're either an anti-vaxxer and you don't believe there's a virus, or you want to force infants to have 85 masks on. The truth is not either of those extremes. It's somewhere in between. But the bully boys and the bad guys have used it as a great opportunity to push the rest of us around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think there's something to that. I forget what I had this brilliant question at the front of my mind, and now I can't think. Oh, I know what it was. Mike Schmidt, the guy who ran the McCain campaign back in 2000. When was it? 2008. Said that libertarians are dangerous to the Republican Party because they want to return us to the gold standard. And the gold standard will put the brakes on our economy. Can you talk us through that? What does he mean by that? And is there any truth to it?
Well, certainly the McCain philosophy, which is the neoconservative philosophy, would be in bad shape if we had, I don't like, Dr. Paul doesn't like using the word gold standard. He likes talking about competing currencies. Mm-hmm. Because there's no one solution. The only solution is to take away government monopoly on money,
right?
Which is never part of the deal. But for the sake of argument, yes, if we were limited to spending what was physically available rather than inventing it out of thin air, and basically, and you guys know this, inflation is a tax on the poor, tax on the rich. Jeff Bezos is not saying, "Oh, damn, my steak is now $10.99 a pound rather than $6.99 a pound." You know, he's not bumming out about this stuff. It hits working people. It's a tax on the poor. It's a tax on the working class, and it's only it's only possible because of the fact that they don't have to have this sort of finite amount of money that's backed by something real that people can agree on. And so, you know, people like him, of course, they hate that because they won't get their wars and they won't get all their goodies from all the Beltway think tanks and all the, you know, the money that goes around from the arms manufacturers.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. You know, and as I was saying, I think what's interesting is we now have hit a point in America where I think a lot of people are open to those discussions that I remember the 80s, I remember in the 90s. People were not open to it. Now, you talked a little bit about, a few times, about terms Dr. Paul doesn't like to use as much, libertarian, you know, gold standard. Let me throw out another one. I was talking to someone who works closely with Rand Paul a few years ago, and I forget which, I think I was the one who brought it up. I used the term non-intervention or foreign policy. And this is why we mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, too. She started using, she was opposed to regime change wars. Now, John, had you heard that phrase before Tulsi Gabbard much?
Not much.
Regime change wars?
No, she made it a sort of a top issue in her campaign. Yeah.
Now, when you look at the world of foreign policy, because we've had a few great discussions on foreign policy on the show today, Daniel, what is the thinking of modern? Well, so by the way, if you don't like the term libertarian, and I understand it, what do you like? What do you prefer?
I mean, I think the term non-intervention is a great term because it goes across the board. It goes, the government can't tell you what to do in your bedroom. It can't tell you what to do with your money. It can't use your money to overthrow countries overseas or to exert undue influence in foreign leaders, bribe foreign leaders, to export propaganda to other countries. I mean, it's just such a versatile term. And, you know, and you can't, you know, shoot your neighbor because you don't like what church he goes to. It's sort of this whole, it goes back to what, you know, the sort of the theme of Dr. Paul's campaigns is the golden rule, you know, and I think non-intervention encompasses that whole idea. Just don't get in people's stuff, you know, and don't hurt people's stuff, don't steal their stuff, and don't kill them.
Yeah, right. Don't steal their stuff and don't kill them, both of which are against the law, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely, except when
Yeah, now, and I will point out that, you know, one of the things that's interesting, we're talking about we've hinted some of the ways things have progressed, but I will say this. People on the left, you must have noticed this, Daniel, seem to have become angrier, more strident, and I've seen lots of people on the left who used to be opposed to censorship, let's say, back in the 80s and 90s. They're not opposed to it anymore. What's happened with the left, and why do you think it's happened with people who at one point were the people against censorship, at one point were the people in favor of personal freedom, for instance? They had problems with economics. But what do you think's happened to the left in the Democratic Party, Daniel? What's made it worse?
And also, a lot of them used to be against corporatism. You know, this whole horrible idea where you merge the state and private economies. There's an F word involved, and it's not the one we're thinking. You know, we used to, you know, at least with us libertarians, for lack of a better word, we used to be allies on that, and they seem to have. That doesn't bother them much anymore either, as long as it's Pfizer, you know, making the big bucks. But it's, you know, I think there's been a huge cleave on the left, and there are good progressives, and you know, that are still out there from our perspective. People like Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, and Tulsi, of course, and many others like that who still adhere to this. I mean, Greenwald has made more enemies on the left.
Oh yeah,
right. That's for sure. And because he hates the mainstream media cheering on censorship. It drives him crazy because it basically goes against the idea of liberalism. So it is. I mean, we're starting to see, sort of when you care, and I think the Trump phenomena had a lot to do with it. They had such a visceral hate for the man. Mm-hmm. They thought, this is like a Buckley, right? Let's put aside these conservative things. We have to fight the Cold War just like the other side is, And when it's over, we'll go back to our values on small government. Well, they never will, and I think that's a really unfortunate thing, and I would like to see that rebound.
Yeah, I agree with that. They've gone after Glenn Greenwald to the extent that they've said that he's undergone a personal transformation in ideology, that he is no longer progressive, and that's just simply not true. How many times, Lee, we've talked about going on, Fox News. I went 9 times to the Tucker Carlson show, not because I agree with everything Tucker Carlson says, but on a lot of these issues, our interests converge, our opinions and positions converge. And Tucker Carlson is a great champion of national security whistleblowers. That doesn't mean that I've become a Fox News Republican or a Tucker Carlson clone. It's just, you've got to cultivate support where you can get it. And there are a lot more places where we can agree with each other than most people realize.
Well, and again, I'm old enough to remember, and you probably remember this too, Dan. I'm not saying you're old like me, but
I am.
I remember when people used to say, for instance, I may disagree with your point, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it.
That's exactly right. John? That is exactly right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's Daniel, that's completely gone out the window. Here's the point about going on with Tucker and agreeing or disagreeing with every point. Who do you agree with? Just seriously, John, who do you agree with on every point? Who hosts a show?
Yeah, nobody.
Nobody. Right?
Well, yeah.
And Daniel, go ahead.
I would say when you talk about I'm old enough to ... when I worked on the Hill for Dr. Paul, I commuted, of course. And so I would print out big stacks of things to read on the bus ride and the Metro ride to and from work. And my daily readings would always include people like Glenn when he wrote for Salon. It would include a huge helping of Counterpunch and all these so-called leftists, because we were speaking the same language on so many issues, and it does seem like those days are gone. I mean, a lot of these people have become very intolerant. And, on Tucker, yes, absolutely. There are a lot of posers on Fox, though, who pretend.
Oh, yeah.
But it's only, I think, and we may have mentioned one of them with the R word earlier, who pretend to be what Tucker is, I think, for tactical political reasons. And that's the part of Fox I can't stand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's one of the things I loved about Andrew Breitbart. The first conversation we had, he told me, and I was writing for HuffPost at the time, but the first conversation we had, he told me that his journalistic heroes were Hunter S. Thompson and Paul Krasner at The Realist. And I used to read The Realist, too. Did you ever see The Realist, Sean?
No, never saw it.
Look it up. It was a kind of hippie era publication.
Okay.
But everyone knows Hunter.
Sure.
Right? Everyone knows Hunter Thompson. That's who Breitbart liked. And when I look at Breitbart now, he's been gone 10 years, and he's really completely gone. And so this idea, he walked the talk. He used to say, he's like, I like the counterculture. I just don't want him running things.
Yeah.
And I understand what he means by that. He wasn't hostile to the counterculture. He was somebody who, and I'm sure, Daniel, you get this too. It's not that I have a problem with dirty hippies. I like dirty hippies. I just don't necessarily want them in charge of, the EPA, let's say, right?
Right.
Exactly. I'd like to hang out with them more, but not have them in charge necessarily.
No, that's right. They have better weed and they listen to better music. Let's face it. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean their economic policies should rule the day. And that's what's happening. Hey, Daniel, we're almost out of time. Tell people real quickly where they can catch your show.
Every day on YouTube, at least while it lasts, Ron Paul Liberty Report, every day live at noon Eastern Time. RonPaulInstitute.org is our website.
Hey, Daniel, it's always great to have you on the show. Great conversation. And fascinating conversation with Scott Ritter, although we're all going to have trouble sleeping after that one. Right, Sean?
Yeah, seriously.
We'll be back tomorrow. 2 more days with the great John Kiriakou. The Kiriakou count starts to go into the serious, end game.
Getting short.
But he's not. He's only going to be, he'll still be here on Sputnik. We'll talk to you tomorrow on The Backstory.